Welcome to the Solo Edit Podcast, a podcast for estheticians looking for a weekly dose of motivation, inspiration, and honest conversations about life in and out of the treatment room.
Hey there. If you know me, you know I am an avid content batcher. And if you listened to last week's podcast episode on how to compete with influencers, you'll know that I'm actually recording this in the middle of the night in Korea. Today, we are going to talk about your numbers. If I could give just one piece of advice to solo estheticians, it would be this. You have to know your numbers. Knowing your numbers is how you are going to grow a business that's profitable, sustainable, and aligned with your goals. How much should I charge is one of the most frequently asked questions I see estheticians ask. And along with that comes the question of what happens if I charge too much and nobody books. But the truth is, overcharging is relative. What feels like too much for one client might feel completely fair to another. It really just depends on what they value. So your pricing should reflect three things, and it's not what the esthetician is doing down the street or in some small town in another part of the United States. It should be focused on your overhead, which is what it actually costs to run your business, the experience you create, and the kind of clients that you want to attract. Your prices aren't just for the hour that you spend in the treatment room. They're for the rent, the back bar, the laundry, the insurance, the equipment, the website, and all of that late night admin work, not to mention the space that you have created and built. All of that counts. Without factoring in these costs, you will always feel like you're hustling harder but never getting ahead. If you haven't sat down to figure out your expenses, that's going to be your first step. Then you're going to want to figure out how many hours you work on average, and then calculate how much it costs to run your business per hour. This is average, of course. If you need help doing this, we do have a financial planning guide in the Kin Academy, which is where we house all of our education. You can find it on our website. You can grab this guide along with our spreadsheet to help you figure all of this out. All right, so aside from knowing what your overhead is, let's talk about the experience multiplier, because this is where your pricing power really grows. Experience is everything in the service industry. This is true whether you're a restaurant owner, an event planner, or an esthetician. And when I talk about the experience, I don't mean necessarily your experience in the industry, which does matter. I more mean the experience that you are offering to your client. For example, how does your client feel when they walk into your space? How do they feel seen or remembered? Do they feel calm, safe, or inspired when they leave your studio or spa? That is the experience multiplier, and this is how you make people feel. That's what makes us memorable to our clients. It's important to remember that clients may come to us for results, but they definitely stay for the way that you make them feel. I often share a story about this crazy nail girl that I had. She was so good at what she did, but she was so rude. The last time I had an appointment with her, I had it. It was Mother's Day, which, mind you, her schedule was open. I did not ask her to open it so I could come in. She immediately implied that she was expecting a larger tip because it was Mother's Day and she was a mom. Then she refused to cut and file my nails because she said I should have booked it as a separate service. Even though her nail skills were 10 out of 10, her attitude was so bad that I canceled immediately all of my ongoing appointments, and I never recommended her to anybody else. The experience, the care, and the customer service you provide is what gives you permission to charge what your work is truly worth. Another important factor when deciding what to charge is who are your ideal clients? Because when you try to be for everyone, you end up resonating with no one. Finding your ideal clients is what's going to help you build a business that feels good, one that's sustainable, and really deeply aligned with your vision. In general, without getting into specifics, your ideal client is going to be the people who value what you offer, respect your boundaries, and obviously look forward to seeing you. You attract them through clarity in your messaging, your branding, your presence. If your dream client values relaxation and wellness, for example, your marketing should reflect that energy. If they're more result-driven, you want to share your knowledge, your education, and your before and afters. When I had my studio, I found that my ideal clients weren't just anybody looking for a facial. They were women who really cared about how they looked and how they felt. They had the resources, obviously, to invest in themselves, but bigger part of that was they were also deeply connected to the community. So I found them where they already were in yoga studios, Pilates classes. And as soon as I found them, I stopped that rat race of just trying to find clients and discounting. Instead of discounting, I aligned. And that is when really everything changed for me. And with that, I'm not saying that discounts are bad, but relying on them to get clients in the door is not sustainable. It is not the best use of your time. And I know it can be really tempting, but it is not being proactive. It's being reactive. Discounts are going to bring in those price shoppers, and it doesn't generally build loyalty. Your ideal clients aren't scrolling for the cheapest option. They're searching for an esthetician who gets them. And this is going to go back to your marketing and your messaging. You don't need to lower your prices. You just need to raise your alignment. Lastly, before I go, we have to discuss profit margin. Your profit margin is the difference between what you charge and what it actually costs to provide the service. It's really easy. We see estheticians online all the time, or we see courses that say, become a six-figure esthetician. Well, if you make $100,000 a year, but it costs $60,000 to run your business, your profit is only $40,000. And that, depending on where you live in the country, is really difficult to live off of. In other words, if you charge $150 for a facial and $50 of that goes towards overhead, your profit margin is $100. That $100 is what is going to allow you to invest back into your business, like new equipment, continuing education, all that kind of stuff. And generally, a healthy profit margin is going to be between 20 and 30% after everything is paid. That is including yourself. So if your monthly revenue is $10,000, for example, you ideally want to keep $2,000 to $3,000 because that is what creates stability. That 2 to 3 is not what you're paying yourself. That is what is left over. If it's lower than 20%, it's going to be really hard to grow. And if it's higher than 30%, you are doing amazing, and high five to you. Protecting that profit margin is what is going to keep your business sustainable and keep you enjoying what you're doing and engaged, because if you are continuing to work hard and not seeing any sort of momentum, that is going to ultimately lead to burnout. So in saying all that, first, stop apologizing for your prices and stop second-guessing your worth. Someone else's wallet is not your responsibility, and you're not too expensive. You're just not for everyone. And that is the whole point of today's podcast. If you're waiting to feel ready to raise your prices, you'll be waiting forever. Confidence does not come first. It follows action. And when your pricing reflects your overhead and the experience you offer your clients, and you find those ideal clients, you won't just be running a business, you're building a career. I often say that although we love making people feel seen, this is not a hobby. At the end of the day, we have to make money. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I will see you next week, same time, same place.